Again today with another video on wars, and today's video we're going to take a deep dive into the Syrian war and the effects that it has on both the population and the environment, and how it's overall playing a part in Syria's political parties. So starting off, we'll start off with the Syrian civil war. The Syrian civil war began in 2011 with protests against President Bashar al-Assad's government, which were part of the broader Arab Spring movement. The conflict quickly escalated into a multifaceted war involving the Syrian government, various opposition groups, ISIS, and Kurdish forces. International actors, including Russia, Iran, the US, and Turkey, have also intervened. The war has caused over 500,000 deaths and displaced millions, resulting in one of the worst humanitarian crises in recent history. The Yemen conflict. The Yemen conflict started in 2014 when Houthi rebels took control of the capital, Sana'a, and ousted the government. A Saudi-led coalition intervened in 2015 to restore the government, leading to a prolonged war. The conflict has created a dire humanitarian situation with widespread famine, disease, and over 100,000 deaths. Millions are displaced and the country's infrastructure is devastated. The Afghanistan conflict. The conflict in Afghanistan continues following the US and NATO withdrawal into 2021 and the subsequent takeover of the Taliban. Despite the Taliban's control, the whole country faces ongoing violence from insurgent groups like ISIS. The humanitarian situation is dire, with widespread poverty, food insecurity, and limited access to healthcare. The Ethiopian civil conflict. The conflict in Ethiopia's Tigray region began in November 2020 between federal government and the TPLF. The war resulted in thousands of deaths and displaced millions. Reports of atrocities, including mass killings and sexual violence, have emerged, causing a significant humanitarian crisis. The Myanmar conflict. The conflict in Myanmar escalated after the military coup in February 2021, which ousted the democratically elected government. The junta faces resistance from ethnic armed groups and pro-democracy protesters. The military's brutal crackdown has led to a widespread of violence, with thousands killed and detained. The conflict has severely impacted the civilian population, causing millions displaced and an economic hardship. Now, for the five historic wars, we're going with the Vietnam War, the Rwandan genocide, the Bosnian War, the Iraq War, and World War II. Start off with the Vietnam War, from 1955 to 1975. The Vietnam War was a prolonged conflict between communists from North Vietnam, supported by its communist allies, and South Vietnam, backed by the United States and other anti-communist nations. The war is noted for its significant impact on the civilization of the civilian population, extensive media coverage, and the anti-war movement. It ended with the fall of Saigon and the unification of Vietnam under communist control. The Rwandan genocide from 1994. The Rwandan genocide was a mass slaughter of the Tutsi ethnic group by Hutu extremists over a period of about 100 days in 1994. An estimated 800,000 people were killed in the genocide. The international community's failure to prevent or stop the atrocities has been widely criticized and has influenced subsequent humanitarian and peacekeeping efforts. The Bosnian War. The Bosnian War from 1992 to 1995. Bosnia was part of the breakup of Yugoslavia and involved ethnic tensions amongst Bosniaks, which are Muslims, Croats, and Serbs. The conflict is notorious for the ethnic cleansing, systematic rape, and genocide that occurred particularly in Srebrenica. It ended with the Dayton Agreement, which established a complex political structure in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The Iraq War. Since 2003 to 2011, the Iraq War began with the 2003 US-led invasion aimed at toppling Saddam Hussein's regime, which has accused of possessing weapons of mass destruction, WMDs. No WMDs were found, but the invasion led to years of insurgency, sectarian violence, and the rise of ISIS. The war significantly impacted Iraq's political landscape and caused substantial civilian casualties and displacement. World War II, 1939 to 1945. World War II was a global conflict that involved most of the world's nations, including all of the great powers, eventually forming two opposite military alliances, the Allies and the Axis. It was the deadliest conflict in human history, marked by significant events such as the Holocaust and the atomic bombs of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The war reshaped the global order and led to the establishment of the United Nations. Now, for the deep dive into the Syrian war, these are the slides that show the representations. So the who. The Syrian war involves various factors, including the Syrian government led by President Bashar al-Assad, rebel groups, terrorist organizations, and international figures. What? The Syrian civil war is a multifaceted conflict that started as a protest movement against the Assad regime and evolved into a full-scale civil war involving multiple domestic and international actors. When? The conflict began in March 2011 and continues to this day. Where? The war is primarily located within Syria, but has significant regional and global impacts due to refugee flows and international military involvement. Key battle zones have included cities like Aleppo, Raqqa, Idlib, and Damascus. Why? The Syrian civil war started due to widespread discontent with Assad's authoritarian rule and economic hardships, escalating after violent government crackdowns on peaceful protests. How? The war evolved from protests to a multifaceted conflict with various factious and international interventions, causing prolonged violence and a severe humanitarian crisis. Deeper causes, and was it a just war? Deeper causes. Political repression. Decades of authoritarian rule under the Assad family with no political freedoms. Economic hardship. High unemployment, corruption, and drought exasperated public discontent. Regional instability. Influence on the Arab Spring and regional power struggles. Was it a just war? Protesters view the initial uprising as just a struggle for democracy and human rights for Assad's government. The regime frames its actions as a defense against terrorism and foreign intervention. The international perspective. Opinions are divided. Some see the intervention as necessary to prevent atrocities. Others view it as exasperating the conflict. Over 600,000 people have died as of March 2024 in the Syrian war. Here shows the destruction of war and what it has on people's homes. Just imagine and picture all of the little children that would be living in these homes. Imagine a mum hanging up their clothes so the child can go to school the next morning, and all of that is gone. For the children and the mothers, if still being alive, have become refugees, with only a few survivors left to stay behind. 2. Conduct of war. Government tactics. Heavily use of artillery, airstrikes, and chemical weapons. Siege tactics against rebel-held areas, leading to a severe humanitarian crisis. Rebel tactics. Guerrilla warfare, car bombs, and control of urban areas. Infighting among various factions has weakened their overall effectiveness. ISIS and extremist groups. Brutal enforcement to the interpretation of Islamic law. Tactics include terror attacks, public executions, and extensive use of social media for recruitment and propaganda. Some more stats for you. Over 16 million people are assessed to need humanitarian aid. Just shy of 7 million people are displaced, and over 2 million Syrian children are out of school. The timeline. The Syrian war started in 2011, began with protests against President Bashar al-Assad, escalating into a multi-sided conflict involving various domestic and international factions, and has resulted in significant humanitarian crisis and territorial disputes. 3. The allies and oppositions of the war. Syrian government allies. Russia, Iran, and China. Russia provides military support, including airstrikes and adversary roles. Iran supplies funding, weapons, fighters, including the Hezbollah militia. China. Political support at the United Nations opposing sanctions and interventions. The opposition's ally include Turkey, United States, and Saudi Arabia and Qatar. Saudi Arabia and Qatar funded and armed various rebel groups. The United States initially supported moderate rebel groups, later focused on fighting ISIS. And Turkey supports certain rebel factions and opposes Kurdish groups near its border. International opposition to Assad. Western countries criticized Assad for human rights abuses and called for his removal. The United Nations has attempted peace negotiations and ceasefire agreements with limited success. This is Bashar al-Assad. Quick little photo of him and a famous quote that he has said, which has impacted the war a lot, and his view on the war. Worry does not mean fear, but readiness for the confrontation. This is how he's saying you can be worried, but you're just prepared. And being prepared for whatever is necessary is the way to go about things. 4. The victims and who suffers the most. As you can see from this photo, we have all of this destruction in the background, all of these houses, land, all just destroyed. And then a mother with her son I would assume they're refugees, and they're just trying to find a safe passage to get to a safe and civilized area. Children vastly affected by loss of education, trauma, and recruitment by armed groups, such as the rebel soldiers in Sierra Leone, showcased in the movie Blood Diamonds. Children are also recruited to bomb the United States military and whoever is trying to oppose the ISIS and terrorist organizations. Humanitarian workers face extreme danger and have been targeted by various factions, complicating aid efforts. Minority groups. Religious and ethnic minorities are targeted for their perceived political allegiances. Civilians suffer the most from violence, displacement, and lack of basic necessities. Refugees. Approximately 5.6 million Syrians have fled the country, facing hardships in refugee camps and host countries. This is a famous photo from Yaman al-Halabi from tours, and this shows a boy who is very badly injured just after a bombing, and everyone's around. His father's trying to carry him to safety. The 8 of other people are trying to help him out, and just total destruction. You can see they've gone into this building on the left side. You can see they've gone into this building on the right side. In the back, it still seems all right, but you can just see everyone gather around in case a building comes crashing down with another bomb to, well, yeah, shelling from forces to President Bashar al-Assad. The environmental impact the war has on Syria. The destruction of infrastructure. Extensive bombings has destroyed homes, schools, hospitals, and water facilities. Agricultural disruption. Farmland has been abandoned or destroyed, leading to food shortages and loss of livelihoods. Pollution. Chemical attacks and conventional weaponry have contaminated land and water supplies. Wildlife and natural habitats. Conflict has disrupted ecosystems, and led to the displacement or death of wildlife. You can just see here, pure destruction. Buildings all broken down. You can see even some of the ones that still look a bit better, they're still nothing compared to what they would be before. The only sign of life is the life within these little patches of grass here. Even over there, you can already tell those have been destroyed. And just imagine, look out into the distance, all of that would be destroyed too. Just a giant hill, mountain, literally cities of just destruction, with a few people just staying behind. Here is a photo of these children in a refugee camp. You can just see you have tents, you have little caravans, you have all of these little places, and then you have just kids playing. They don't understand or comprehend what's going on in the war, meaning that they're taking it in a bit slow. Maybe from a bigger age, you'd be able to tell, but this just showcases how the war is impacting the population and turning their all right living conditions into just putrid living conditions. 6. The end of war, predictions, and possible outcomes. The current status. Assad's regime has regained control over much of Syria, but significant areas remain contested. Ongoing skirmishes and ISIS resurgence in some regions. Predictions. The short-term prediction. Continued conflict with occasional ceasefires and temporary truces. And then the long term is possible prolonged instability unless a comprehensive political solution is reached. Possible outcome. Political settlement. A negotiated settlement could bring peace, but it's difficult to achieve given the divisions between nations. Continued conflict. Without resolution, low-intensity conflict could persist for years. Partition. Syria might de facto split into regions controlled by different factions if a unified state proves ungovernable. And that is the end of these slides. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, make sure to leave a comment on this video or just email me at liamansur16@gmail.com, or you know what, even send me a message 0421-834-721. Don't worry, Gary, it's not my real number, just for the video. But thank you so much for watching, everyone. Hope you have an amazing day. And of course, stay safe.